Welcome to The Pursuit, episode number 8. Today I'm joined by a special guest, Julie. Julie, how do I say your last name?
Stewart.
Okay, so the American way. It's not Stewart, it's Stewart.
Stewart.
And she is the founder, CEO, and owner, operator of Utopia Foot and Shoulder Massage. And how long you been open?
We have been open for 4.5 years.
4.5 years. So it's 2025, coming up on 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you opened in 2020.
I did.
Okay, that's a great year to open a business.
It was the perfect year to open a business where you touch people.
Yeah. I decided to open a second location in February 2020, which has to be, in terms of timing, the greatest timing of any business.
Yeah, I think after we did a build out that took about 7 months, and then we get our business license, I think around March 19th, just in time for the world to shut down.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, Utopia Foot and Shoulder.
Yeah, we made it.
Coming up on 5 years, which is, most businesses don't make it to that, and you've made it, and you did it in the worst possible time. So, but I mean, that's probably just a taste of the story of
Just a taste.
your entrepreneurship journey. So this episode, I call this The Pursuit because I've been in business now coming up on 10 years with Oxfit. And before that, I had, I dabbled in a couple of other businesses. But in terms of growing something, in terms of my whole like sporting career and stuff like that, when I was younger, I was always waiting for like the happiness to be at the end of something, right? Like when I get this contract or when I get to this, and then in terms of business, I was doing the same. When I get this number of members, when I get this many locations. And with 2020 and everything, what I started to realize is there's no happiness at the end of something. You've got to find it in the day-to-day of what you're doing. And so where is the happiness in entrepreneurship for you?
Well, you're exactly right about that, because you're always striving to do more and to improve yourself and to make things better. I find happiness with Utopia. I find I didn't honestly, I didn't realize how much it would just thrill my soul, honestly, to see other people so happy because they're coming in, they're in pain, they just need to relax, they need a minute to themselves, and they leave and they're so happy, and it makes us happy. It's what keeps us going, is to see that we're really serving people in a time that they need us.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like I said, you survived 4 years, but in that time, like let's go back before that, because I think from talking to you about business, the thing that fascinates me the most about you is like this is not your first business. You sold a business that you were a part of, and Utopia is it your second or would it be
It's my second
business? And you've learned a lot from growing that first business that now you're applying on a level that I wish I would have known, but you can only know sometimes from going through it, right? So tell me about the first business that you built and sold.
So my background is in marketing, digital media, and I've been doing this since 1999, showing my age, but it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
So I started my career at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I worked there for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And it really set my foundation up. They provided a lot of training for us, a huge network, and I hold that dearly just because it gave me such a good foundation to start out and to pursue other avenues.
What were you doing there?
So my first job, I worked as a marketing coordinator.
Okay.
And I worked with arts, sports, and entertainment. So the cool thing about it is I was at every event in town, having the time of my life, which is perfect when you're 24 years old. And then I finally realized, I'm like, I don't think I can make money doing this. This is fun, but this doesn't necessarily pay the bills. So I moved over into sales.
And what
And
age?
then
Oh, okay, cool.
I moved after 3 years. I moved into sales, and so I spent 7 years. I started working in digital media early 2000s when people were still getting their websites. They didn't even know what we weren't buying our plane tickets on a website at the time. And all these big businesses were still figuring out, well, how does this work? So I was early in on that game, and got a good foundation of it, a good taste of it. And so I continued on. I worked for a couple of other companies until I finally said, well, I was laid off from a company. They like dissolved the whole entire company. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start my own thing. I can do this on my own. So I started a digital media agency where we were specializing in digital media, partnered with a few people, and just went for it. And I was working with local accounts to multi chains like restaurants. Had a lot of success in that industry, and really built this business. And then after 10 years, I was going through a phase where I'm like, I want something else. I think an entrepreneur is always looking for something else. And I love media, I love marketing, and I've learned so much from it. I never want to let go of that. But I gave myself 5 years to figure out, okay, what could I do or what can I invent? And it literally was almost 5 years later, and I realized it was right in front of me of what I wanted to do, which I was going to a spa similar to mine, and I was always so fascinated with the business model. I'm like, it's so transactional, it's so affordable, and honestly, I'm like, how can I make this better? So I started just going and doing my own market research and visiting other locations and figuring out, what do I like, what do I not like. And I'm like, I think I can do this better. So that was my goal for Utopia. Moving back to the digital media agency, I did have an opportunity that presented itself about a year and a half ago, and I was able to sell the agency. I currently work for the agency who bought me, but I work part time. I do sales part time for them still. So because I enjoy it, and I do love it, and I want to stay connected to that in some level. But I will say, all the years of marketing has set me up to own a business like Utopia and understand what's important, because I've worked with local businesses, and I hear, they will not spend money on promoting themselves. They don't get connected in the community. They don't get a pulse on their customer service. And I've taken all of the things I've learned throughout the years and I've put it into Utopia to help make it successful.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome to hear the way you just describe it and you go through it. And every time I talk to a business owner, they do the same thing where it's like they give you almost like the movie plot to their life, right? Like, this was the thing, this is, and it just sounds so ideal. Like, oh, it all just fell into place. But the thing that stood out the most from what you just said, going back to where your first business started, it started by you getting laid off.
Mhm.
And you just skip by it. Like, I got laid off and I thought I'll open a business. From you getting laid off, you started a 10-year business, right? Like, that doesn't just happen. That's
Mhm.
in there. Like, you have to change it as a person, right? Like, how did that, like, now you look back and getting laid off was probably the biggest gift of your life,
For
right?
sure.
But at the time, what was it like? How easy was it to just start your own thing?
Well, I mean, I don't just do things. There's got to be a strategy in place. I have to worry about it, think about it, torture myself. And I had been laid off, I think, well, 10 years at the newspaper. It was when everything started to change. Print newspapers were no longer a thing. Everything was moving into digital, and so they started having massive layoffs there. So I ended up moving on from that. So that was kind of and that made me nervous because it's what I knew for 10 years. And then I went to another company and they hired me, and I lose my job 2 weeks later because they decided they wanted to take a different direction and use someone internally. And I was still in training. Did not even have an opportunity to show them what I could do.
And
And then
how old were
I
you?
went, um,
How old were you at that point?
I can't remember those things. Probably around 34,
Was
35.
Did you have kids at that point?
I I think I did.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think my son, who's 13, was really young at the time. I can't remember exactly on the dates.
So new
And
job. You gotta.
no, actually, I did not have kids
Okay.
because yeah, yes, I remember now because I took a job that I did not want to take, but I was expecting my first child and I'm like, no one's going to hire me if I'm pregnant, so I just got to take a job. It turned out to be a great job. I was there for I think 3 years, and
Okay.
that's the company. It was under IAC, which is one of the largest media conglomerates, and they rolled this portion of the business up under other, you know, up under their umbrella somewhere else. So everyone lost their jobs. And I panicked, of course, but I also got a little bit of a payout. So I felt like I was secure
Hmm.
financially, at least, but I knew when I started that business that I didn't have a choice. It's like, this has to work and I have to do everything I can. So one of my gifts, there's a lot of things I'm not good at, but one of my gifts is networking and staying in touch with people. So I reached out to everyone, and I had built relationships with and had, they trusted me, and I just started moving clients over
Yeah.
and pushed hard and gave myself goals. And every year I write out goals of how I'm going to increase it. And I just literally have vision boards of how do I increase what I'm currently doing and what do I have to do. And that's my mentality with everything. It's like, okay, what do I have to do to get to here?
Hmm. And so from that, like you said, like you said, you didn't have a choice, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
you got a young child, you've been
Mm-hmm.
laid off, you know that the industry is changing, you've got
Mm-hmm.
some funds to put in,
Mm-hmm.
but still you could have gone and looked for another job potentially, right? Like,
Right.
but you just decided at that point you had enough experience to go and do it on your own.
Correct.
And like you said, I talk to you coming in and out of the gym, and I see you quite a bit. And like what you just described is where I got to worry about stuff like that. You tell me that kind of stuff, right? Like I got to worry about it for a while before I go and do it. Like the fact that you just went and did that and built a 10-year business and you just skip over it like it's nothing, like that's incredible what you built in that time as that's your first business. Your first business
Hmm.
went 10 years and
Yeah.
you still kind of work for it, but you got bought out. Like you did it. You built
Hmm.
the business and you had an exit, kind of, right? You still obviously have some ties to it, but
Hmm.
how hard was that?
Um, I just when I put my head to something, I'll do it, and I like list. I like to plan, and I do find that you have to make sure that you're doing the right thing as far as what you're planning. Like someone can get, I've noticed other people when they'll start a business, they get so much in the weeds of the website, so much in the weeds of maybe making social media posts. And I was one of these. I was literally working in the digital media field and didn't even have a social media page for
Mm.
my agency. I didn't even think. I mean, at the time, it wasn't so content driven also, but I didn't need that. It was about just going after the business, building the relationships, networking with people.
Do you think
And
do you think people tend to do that kind of stuff to hide? Like, because like
um
you're the
I
kind of
just
person that you just opened your network book and was like, I'm just gonna start asking people. That's not
yeah,
easy, right? Like you've got to be a certain kind of person to do that. Whereas some
yeah.
people, I think, when I talk to especially new business owners, they're like, my website's not ready. And I'm like, you don't even have a fucking customer. What are you talking about? Like,
Right,
who cares? You don't have the iPhone
right,
25. Nobody's waiting for you to launch this business.
right. Now, don't get me wrong. The fundamentals, you have to have a website, you have to be set up, you have to have all of those things, but you can get too in the weeds and not going after what's actually going to convert into money. Um, and I also found, I mean, I was wearing a lot of hats. I was doing everything, from accounting, accounts payable, selling, you name it.
Yeah.
But one thing I know in sales is you have to be genuine, you have to be honest, you have to own mistakes. Nobody likes a cheesy salesperson that's selling them something because it's their end of the year number. We all know they've got to make it, and they're really pushing it on you. No one likes that. So I found that I was more of a consultant versus a salesperson.
Yeah.
So anyone out there in sales, that's the only way to do it.
Yeah. Well, and that's what you're good at from talking to you is like you're open and honest, right? Like I think that's why me and you get along. We can talk to each other and just be open, and
Hmm.
like you said, it either sells it right away to somebody because they know you're honest, or it puts people off. But at least you're gonna find your customers, right? Like
Hmm.
rather than tricking someone into a deal that isn't gonna work for either of you. So
Yeah.
that's cool to know.
Yeah, another thing is just reading people and knowing how they want to be talked to or work, or how they prefer to be worked with, um, or worked with.
Yeah.
It's just know your audience.
So 10 years in to that
10 years
business,
in,
you sold,
I sold.
and the business was doing well.
The
Obviously,
business was the business was not at the height of where it was, and that's only because I had my own personal issues of a year of dealing with breast cancer, right? I had a really bad year personally, and I couldn't put everything I had into it, but it was still doing fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you sold. Was your illness one of the reasons that you sold? Was it like had you come to the end of where you were going with that?
It was one of those things where it was coming to an end. Like, I guess the best way to say it would be business relationships with partners were not advancing the way I prefer them to advance. And it was just time. It
Mhm.
was a great 10 years. No complaints. Learned a lot, did a lot. I think 1 year or even a couple years, I probably had $5 million worth of business.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you did it. I mean, you built
I did
something.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The key to what you're saying though, and something that we've talked about before is um, you took time to figure out what you want to do next. And they bought your business, right? But you were the whole business, weren't you? So they bought you, basically, right? Like
Hmm.
you couldn't hand off the business, they buy that, and then you go and for 5 years put your feet up and decide what you want to do. In
Hmm.
order for them to buy the business, they had to buy you, right? And
Hmm.
with this next business that you've been building for the past 4 years, that's not going to happen again, right? Like nobody's going to come along at the end of the next 10 years and be able to buy Julie. They'll have to buy Utopia, right? And how does that?
Hopefully.
Yeah, right. But I mean, that's why we build a bit. Obviously, we build a business to get the revenue now to live a life, but everybody's goal should be to build a business to sell eventually,
Hmm.
right? And you've done it.
Hmm.
And you saw that you built a successful job in some ways for yourself.
Hmm.
And now it feels like you're building a business that could potentially be something that somebody wants to buy. Did you learn that from going through that, or is that something that you're still learning?
It's something that I'm still learning. I'm definitely a believer that, if this sounds right to say, you just have to trust where you never know what door's going to open. You never know what circumstance is going to, you know, you're going to be faced with. And I can't say for sure what 10 years from now looks like, because 10 years ago, did I think that I would be owning a spa? I had no idea that that's what I would be doing. Um, so you just have to go with it, and then trust that there's doors that are going to open to lead you to bigger and better things, and not ignore ideas that you have. I had a random idea a couple weeks ago and I started researching hard on it, and it's still in the back of my head. Who knows? There could be other businesses that could happen in the future. The goal with Utopia is to grow Utopia and to have more locations.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's all you can know right now is just that.
Yep, that's all I can know.
Yeah,
Hopefully we'll have announcements to make soon.
but the difference with Utopia, and probably in some ways why you chose to do the spa compared to going back into marketing or opening an agency of some kind,
Mhm.
is because when you described the last business, you were talking about I was the sales, I was the accounts receivable, I was the
Mhm.
say, I was the doing the work, you were everything, right?
Mhm.
Now, how many clients have you massaged?
I can't tell you that. I can tell you that we see over 1,000 people a month.
And you're not massaging 1,000 people a month,
Nope.
and you're not also then checking people in at the front desk, massaging them, accounts, marketing. You're not doing that, right? So
Nope.
it's a
I'm
big
overseeing everything from afar right here at my desk.
that's a huge difference, right? Like now you're
Mhm.
an actual entrepreneur, right?
Well, also when you as you evolve, you learn things about yourself. And one thing that I've learned is, even though I have been successful with sales in the past, I enjoy more of the marketing aspect of it versus the sell of, you know, begging someone to choose you. Sometimes that at this point in my life, that's old for me. Um, and with Utopia, I'm able to put a lot of my marketing skills, and then turns out I know how to run a business, right? And so sharpen those skills as well to lead to whatever the next thing is, and more locations with Utopia.
Yeah. So Utopia, you sold the business. You started working for the business. So you sold the marketing company
Hmm.
agency,
Hmm.
and then it was just a straight line from there to now. How many clients do you say a month?
I'm over 1,000.
So it's just a straight line from there to 1,000 a month, right?
Hmm.
Once you
Well, so I started out when I sold the business. I was working as a VP of sales for the company, and to be honest, I was working about 12 to 14 hours a day. And as an entrepreneur, it's really hard to work for someone else.
yeah,
It's really hard when
just
you
like
know.
years of working for yourself, right?
Well, it's also really hard to work when you know what you're doing. You have a plan, you can make it happen, but you have to go through all the channels, and you have to go through all the things you have to go through in the corporate world. And it's not for me. It's not for me anymore at this stage of my life. I did it all for years, and it's just not for me. I like the ability to be able to make my own decisions, set my day. I still work really, really hard, but it's just a different mentality now.
Hmm. And so you just opened up Utopia, and then with all your skills, it just went from the doors opening to absolutely crushing it with no hiccups.
Well, so opening the year of COVID,
Yeah.
you have to do the grassroots marketing. I mean, there is no doubt that during COVID, my family and we would go for walks every night in neighborhoods, and we would put flyers in people's mailboxes. I don't think I'm allowed to do that, but I did it. I'm like, there's a lot of things in this world right now to worry about. This is not one of
You're
them.
definitely not going to get arrested for that in the middle of
Right.
2020.
I mean, yeah, we had one person yell at us for it, and I'm like, listen, there's other things to worry about. This is not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Um, so we had to work hard the first year, and then the second year things started easing up with COVID, and the business started picking up, and then we could really tell it's starting to take off. And then the one thing we haven't mentioned is I had a fire. Yeah, I get kicked in the face quite a bit. So we had a fire and we were closed for an entire year. We've been open now for about 15 months since the fire. And during that time is when I kind of pulled back from the business that bought me, where I was working the 12 to 14 hours a day. I did that this past January, and I said, you know what? No, this is not how this is going to happen. I am going to put all of my eggs into the Utopia basket, and I'm going to make this business grow and work and take it to another level. And that's what we've done this year. And also this year we started mobile chair massage, and that has been where we will go to. We don't go to homes, but we go to different events. We've gone to hotels, to senior living facilities, to schools, all kinds of places. And we just really launched it a few months ago, but we're doing about 3 to 5 events a month. And so that's a different stream of revenue than what's actually coming in into the spa. Um, so yeah, always evolving, always coming up with ideas and always figuring out how to market to people. And that's my main thing is, how do you dig in? You have to dig in with the community. You have to dig in with the schools. You have to dig in with, different businesses and do partnerships with them and promote each other and really make yourself known in the community, on top of the fundamentals of advertising are your website, search, social,
Mm,
and email. Those are the and SEO. Those are the fundamentals. And then when you're at your business, it's the customer service. I mean, we make people happy, but of course you're going to get people who come in and they're going to not be happy, and you have to deal with them. And you just have to figure out, how do I deal with them where I'm not losing my ass, but I'm making them happy and feel special, because when you do that, they come back to you.
mhm. Yeah, it's an opportunity, right? If
It's
that,
an opportunity.
yeah. Come on. Oh, I thought it was my internet. I think it was Julie's internet. But hopefully we'll get it back on here in a second. We'll keep an eye out. But what an awesome story, right? Listening to Julie and she's back.
I'm back.
I don't know if that was mine or yours. I'm sorry.
No,
But,
it's mine. We just had a fuse to blow in our house and it
oh,
knocked everything out. So, even my phone, which is interesting, but we're back.
we're talking too much good stuff. It had to slow us down a little bit.
I guess so.
But it's amazing listening to your story, and just I love the way you just skip over things. Like, and I think most people do when they're working towards something bigger, which is what clearly you're doing, and you've got big goals and big visions for where you want to go. Like you said, when you put your mind to something, you just do it. But like
Hmm.
looking at what you've done, and you got laid off. That started your first business. You built that business for 10 years. You sold it. You had breast cancer. You just kept working. You decided what's next. And then you actually open a business during a pandemic. You start to see some success. And then you have a fire, which closes the business for how long did it close the business for?
A whole year.
Closed the business for a year. So like you've been knocked back so many times in these business journeys. Like why do you keep going? Why do you not go get a job?
I'm not real sure how many lives I have. I don't know if I'm like a cat with 9 lives, but um, I just, I choose to understand that life is not easy. Sometimes you're going to get kicked in the face. It's okay to lay down and roll around in it for a minute, but you just have to get up and keep moving and not let that define you. I mean, I actually hate saying I had breast cancer, I had a fire. I'm like so over that story. I don't even know what to do about it because it's not who I am. It's just part of who I am to make me a stronger person, and those are things I hate saying, like, oh, everything makes you stronger. You're so strong. But I just keep moving and do the best that I can. And I'm just very clear with the goals that I set and what I want, and then I go for it.
Yeah. And so you must have a bigger vision for where you want to go now to be able to just keep getting through them things. Because for most people, it'd be like, started in 2020, that could have closed my business. But then it didn't. And then I had a fire, and that didn't close my business, you know? So, like, how do you keep that, you know, what is it that keeps you pushing forward?
I don't know. I just have visions of what I want, and that's just the way I've always goal setting. Like I set a goal, and can you hear the dog barking now?
Yeah, it's not. I just wondered what it was for a second, but
I'm
yeah.
so sorry. Yeah, I think everybody's dealing with this power outage, and people are coming to the door. But anyway, so no, I just set goals of what I want, and you know, you even gave me the couple of books to read that I listened to. That what is it? That 10x is better than 2x, or 2x is better than 10x, and then who, not how. Those were very motivating, and they really define the entrepreneur, in my opinion, the best way. It's not about how much money I can make. It's like, what can I, like, the entrepreneur is truly about what can I accomplish. And I think I have a challenge in my head of, can I really have 5 locations of Utopia? Yeah, let's try it. Let's do it.
Right. Yeah. Because the worst things have already happened anyway.
That's what you keep telling me. And I love that, because you are a great reminder of that. You're like, you've already dealt with so much. Why can't, you know, because things can always go sideways and you just have to deal with it. But you've definitely been very motivating for me to remind me, like, you've already dealt with a lot of bad things and you keep going. So keep going.
Well, one of my biggest regrets is that during the pandemic, when everybody was scared, I should have just opened 5 more, because if it was gonna go wrong, it's gonna go wrong for everyone now. If the worst
Right?
thing is gonna happen, then hey, let's see how many loans we can get and go and
Right.
open.
Right.
And then, oh, well, everybody's going bankrupt anyway. So, like, what is there to lose? And that is, like you said, it's, let me see what I can accomplish, not see how much money I can make. It shifts the whole thing, right?
It does.
And like with you, if you would have just focused on money the first few years there with a pandemic and then a fire, you would have just quit right then, right? Because it wouldn't make any sense on the balance sheet to keep going.
Right.
But what can you accomplish, and can I get it to this point? And just, what person do I need to become to make that happen is growth, and is the business, and is the pursuit of the happiness, right? Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah,
Well,
and I'll say that, you know, right now, trying to move forward with opening more locations, I am definitely paying attention to things like the book Who Not How, like putting people in place who are, you know, more of the expert in areas that can really help me. And I think making those investments sometimes versus trying to kill yourself to do every little thing to save a buck is the best way to go. Now, don't get me wrong, you have to save a buck where you can, but it also pays off. For instance, my first round of Utopia, I had an attorney look at the lease and probably paid him $150. And he halfway looked at it. I had no idea. You know, I'm like, okay, yeah, sounds good. And everything's fine with the lease, but like, it would have been nice to have someone to really look over a lease. Moving forward, you know, looking at other locations and having attorneys look at leases, I'm like, oh, wow, this is costing me a lot more, but it's actually makes so much more sense. So, you know, you just learn as you go on, you know, what you do and how you do things, and then putting the right people in place.
The story of your like 20 years in business is shifting from, and I think everyone should start when they're a first startup and you don't have many resources, as a how can I do this? But then it's who can I bring with me and who can help, right? And your first business was all about how. How am I going to do this? How can I service these clients? How can I sell? Which is the same as me, like starting up, like I'm coaching every class, I'm doing it. And then you're like, okay, well, if I want 2, I can't now coach every class. Oh, I want 3. Now I definitely can't. And it's stretching that comfort zone, right? Because one location, you can still go and show up there every day and sit in the thing and make sure everything's right. But 5, you can't be at 5 places at once. And like, that is if you do get to that point, no matter what, even if everything goes to shit, like we talk about, what you'll have learned from them 5 is the next thing that you launch will be even bigger, or you'll just know how to build it different. Like you just learn so much from, like you said, making them mistakes. Like, okay, that lease, $150 was not enough. Now, 10 grand is probably too much, but I'm going to find that sweet spot where someone's going to look after me here. And yeah, it's cool. So
Right.
Awesome, Julia. We're at 35 minutes.
Okay.
I'd love to do it again sometime, as you know, catch up, see how we're growing and where you're at. And thank you for hanging out.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your motivation too. You give me a lot of really good motivation that is meant to be, and I'm meant to hear, and I appreciate it.
Well, it's when you see a business owner, right? Like you don't have to say many words to each other because you're both in the same spot. It's just you just need someone to like validate what you're already thinking, right? Or you just need someone to say to you what you say to other people, right?
Right.
Like
I always remember, and this is a true story. You told me one day, you said, if anybody can do it, I know you can do it.
Yeah. You're ready. You've already done it. So whatever's going to come up on your next journey is not going to be any different to what you've already gone through. So you got it. All right, Julie. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
What day is it? Tuesday?
I'm not sure.
All right. Thanks a lot.